All right, let's go. Glenn, I'm glad that you're right here. Oh, look at they even make cool colors. Sweet. Is that one doing too? Wait a minute. Is this one? No. This is a decoy. This one is meant to distract you while that one attacks.
That's just the great one. That's for the music.
Ah, okay. Well, let's it's kind of crackly too, isn't it?
Yeah.
Guess
Got
what?
reverb.
I'm not gonna do it. Thanks for getting those working. We're not gonna use them. Now this is easier, right?
Yes.
I'm so glad you guys are here. Welcome, Ruth Ann, Patricia. I'm so glad you guys are here. For those of you that maybe just got pulled into the room, you're like, who's this guy with the puffy hair? My name is Vic Mignogna. Last name is Italian, but just call me Vic. It's always the easiest. Been a voice actor for a little over 20 years. Been involved in 300 or 400 different animated series, video games. And several years ago, I decided to let my inner nerd come out more than it had before, and created a web series called Star Trek Continues. It picks up where the original Star Trek series was canceled, and it finishes that iconic 5-year mission that Captain Kirk used to talk about at the beginning of every episode. And it leaves everybody right where they were when Star Trek the Motion Picture came out. Now some of you younger people are like, what are you even talking about? Well, in a nutshell, the original Star Trek series was supposed to be a 5-year mission, and it was canceled before they finished that. And then the next time you saw Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, it was 10 years later in Star Trek the Motion Picture. And by that time, Captain Kirk had become an admiral at Starfleet. He took promotion and left the ship. Mr. Spock had gone back to Vulcan. Everybody had kind of scattered. So I wanted to fill that gap and explain, like finish that 5-year mission, and explain why everybody was where they were. And I kind of fulfilled my childhood dream of playing Captain Kirk. So that was fun. Check it out on YouTube. It's all free. StarTrekContinues.com is the website. Recently I've been doing some audiobooks. COVID, of course, has kind of rewritten the rules for working, finding work, keeping busy. I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about. And for me, it worked out really great that I never did audiobooks before. A lot of my voice actor friends did audiobooks, and they always told me, hey Vic, if you ever get the chance to do audiobooks, don't. Because they're really time consuming, and they don't pay very well. And so I had made a mental note. I got it, don't do audiobooks. Well then, everything shut down, and right at the exact time, an author contacted me and said, hey, I'm a fan of your voice work. I would love for you to do an audiobook. It's like, wait a minute, but my brain says don't do audiobooks. But I decided to anyway, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it, and the first one was called In Plain Sight. It's a really cool crime detective novel, only it takes place in kind of an alternate reality. So it's like New York City of the 40s, but there are wizards and subway cars that hover by magic, and so they're just elements of magic in an otherwise normal setting. And the second one that I just finished recently that I'm very excited about is called The Crimson Spark, and it's a full-on fantastic novel. Like the entire universe is a fictitious universe, the countries and the races of people and the story, very much like Lord of the Rings, like with their all different languages and all kinds of things. So both of them are on Audible. If you're audiobook types, I hope you'll check them out. They're really a lot of fun. Apart from that, I am just anxious to talk with you about anything on your mind. I talked to a couple of you when you came to the table, and I'm like, get questions ready, get Star Trek questions ready, get questions ready. So who's got one ready, and we can talk about anything you want to talk about. Yes, sir.
I actually have a question pertaining to Star Trek Continues.
Yay.
When you were working on production for it, and when you had the episodes that were going on, being made and uploaded on YouTube and so on and so forth, was there anybody from the original series that had seen it and had given their input as to what they thought of it?
Well, I can tell you this. Who here knows who played Lieutenant Uhura, the communications officer? Nichelle Nichols. Yeah, that was great. It was like a race to see who could do it first. When we premiered our very first episode, Pilgrim of Eternity was the name of it. When we premiered that episode at Phoenix Comic-Con in 2013, Nichelle Nichols was one of the guests at the event. And I invited her, I'd done several events with her, and I invited her to come to our screening. So I sat here, and Nichelle Nichols sat beside me, and Kim Stinger, the girl who played Uhura in our series, sat on the other side of Nichelle. And the entire time we were watching it, Nichelle kept leaning over to me and going, "How did you do this? It looks amazing. It's just like the original." She was having so much fun, and she was hugging Kim, you know, and just, it was such a neat thing, you know. And then, ultimately, kind of speaking of Nichelle Nichols, about, I don't know, a year and a half or two ago, she actually came down to the studio where we shot Star Trek Continues. The sets are still standing. In fact, we give tours of the sets and open them up for people to take tours and get pictures of themselves sitting in the captain's chair and standing on the transporter platform. And Nichelle came down and did some kind of a video production there where she actually, you know, was on our sets, and she was just blown away. She's like, "I feel like I just stepped back in time." And she was making jokes as she sat in the captain's chair, and she's like, "You know, Bill Shatner had this enough, it's my turn." So, she's wonderful. What a wonderful kind of lady. As far as other people in the series, Walter Koenig, who played Chekhov, knows about the series, has said a lot of nice things. I know Bill Shatner knows about it. I've never talked about it because I just, you know, want to be friends. I don't want to be like that Star Trek fanboy, so that I really am. But he and I have done several events together, and I know fans have talked to him a lot about the series. George Takei knows about it. We've had several guest stars from the original series. In fact, one of our episodes of my series was actually written by a woman who wrote an original series episode. There was an episode of Star Trek called The Tholian Web in the third season of Star Trek. It was written by a woman named Judy Burns, and she contacted me completely out of the blue and said, I love what you're doing with Star Trek Continues, and I have a story that's a sequel to The Tholian Web. So we got together in Los Angeles, and we decided to make it, and that is what turned out to be our 8th episode, the one with Old Kirk. Judy Burns wrote that episode. So how cool is it that somebody who wrote an original series episode wrote one of ours as well? Thanks for the question. Yes, who's got a question? Who's next? Come on, everybody. Yes, sir.
So, like, when you're gearing up to do a voice acting role like Edward Elric, and there's a lot of emotion put into the scene, do you do anything to get your mental state in that, or do you just go in and we're ready to go? Or, like, how do you prepare for it? Because some of the scenes in Full Metal, they're, like, super deep, you know?
Yeah.
So, I'm just curious on how you go in with that
Um,
mindset.
My recollection is that often you've been in the studio for a little while, so you're kind of you're in it. It's kind of like the fifth inning of a baseball game. You're playing ball, right? You've been in the game 5 innings now, so you're in the zone. You know what I mean? My recollection was, I mean, for you guys that don't know, whenever you record any kind of anime, you basically go into the studio and then they lock you in a padded box. It's like a phone booth with foam padding in it. It's all dark except for the light of the screen that's in front of you, and that's got the animation on it. And you've got a mic hanging in front of you, you put headphones on, and you kind of just enter your own little world. It's like you and the screen, you know? A lot of those emotional scenes in Full Metal really got to me emotionally. Early on, like for instance, when Tucker transmuted his daughter and the dog, and I mean, what a horrific moment and very emotional. And Ed was pretty angry about it. Was punching on him and crying right in the rain in the street and stuff. And people are always like, "Were you really crying?" You know, when that happened. And I have to confess, I wasn't, only because it was very early in the series. I hadn't yet come to know the characters. I was still new to Full Metal Alchemist. Does that make sense? So I was just I was acting. I was pretending, I was acting that I was crying, acting that I was upset. But very shortly after that, a couple of other episodes really got to me. And I found myself in tears watching them for the first time. And I'll never forget, it was so funny, the director would say to me, he was so concerned, right, that I was in this padded box crying. And he was like, do you want to take a few minutes? Would you like to take a few minutes? And I would always say, are you kidding? No, record. Hit the button now. You know what I mean? Let's catch this while it's real, while it's visceral, and you don't have to pretend. And so a lot of the times in Full Metal that you would hear Ed upset were real. I came to really, really love those characters and their relationships and the story in general. Question?
I got a good one for you.
Uh-oh. It's a good one.
So, how did you meet with Grant from Mythbusters, and how did you get him to join your show?
That's a great question. So, has anyone seen Mythbusters?
Yeah.
I don't
Yep.
think a lot of us anime fans are Mythbusters fans.
That's a good show.
Yeah.
And do you have any good stories about him?
Oh, gosh. Well, first of all, before I say anything about Grant, those of you that don't know, most of you probably do. We lost him very unexpectedly and tragically last year. I mean, he was like mid-40s, and he had a brain aneurysm. I mean, he was perfectly healthy. It was a horrible loss. He was one of the kindest guys. I have a lot of great stories about him. I met Grant at Dragon Con. Some of you were in the Dragon Con area here. I met Grant at Dragon Con several years ago, and it was just as I was putting together my plan to do a Star Trek production. I had started building the sets, but I hadn't cast everyone yet. And I was at Dragon Con, and I judged the masquerade, the cosplay contest, with Grant and what's the girl's name from Mythbusters? Carrie. Grant and Carrie and me were the judges for the costume contest. And we just cut up the whole time, and Grant and I became friends. And then several months later, I saw him at a get-together in Los Angeles, and he said, "What are you up to?" And I pulled my phone out, and I showed him some pictures of the sets we were building. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, I love the original Star Trek series. I was such a big fan when I was young. Sulu, and it was I loved that character." And as I was standing there looking at him, I suddenly thought, hey, wait a minute. I haven't cast anyone to play Sulu yet. So I asked him if he would do it. He said, absolutely. And that's how we got him involved. And he was so great. He was the nicest guy. One fun story I love to share is that you guys know the transporter room, right? Where they step up on the platform, energized, they beam away, right? And they stand on those pads that light from underneath, right? Well, we needed to build those. So in order to build those and be able to stand on them, you have to cut a hole in the floor, right? And then you have to shine a light from underneath. But then you need something sturdy enough that your actors can stand on, but will also allow the light to come through, right? So I was talking to Grant about this, and Grant said, hey, have you ever seen Robot Wars? And I said, no. And he said, well, he's part of it, or he worked on it, or he helped with it. And he said, in the arena, if any of you have seen Robot Wars, in the arena, the whole perimeter of the arena, they have these real thick plexiglass sheets that protect the audience, right? And Grant said, just a couple of weeks ago, we replaced all of those because they were so like nicked up with scratches and everything. But they're like inch-thick plexiglass, heavy, strong plexiglass. And Grant said, maybe we could use those. And I was like, that's a great idea. So he cut them up himself into 2x2 squares. And then we shipped them. There are 6 pads that you stand on in the transporter platform. And he shipped 6 of them to the studio, and we mounted them underneath so that people could stand on them and the light would still come through. So he was, some of the people just kind of show up and do their thing, but Grant was one of those people who was really interested and invested in it. So he would voluntarily come up with ideas. You know the scope that Sulu, that little scope, Sulu would go, would come out and he'd look into the scope. We had one of those and it didn't work. I mean, it was supposed to work, but it didn't. So Grant went down there a couple of days before we were supposed to shoot our episode to work on it electronically to make it work. So he was just one of those kind of guys, you know? An amazing guy. Down at our studio, we've created a nameplate that says Hikaru Sulu, like it's his room, like it's his quarters. And it's on the wall in the corridor, next to a door that kind of like, you know, just to honor him. Question? Yes?
How fun was it to come back and do Full Metal Alchemist?
Oh my gosh, it was so great. He asked about coming back to do Brotherhood. You guys, when we did the first Full Metal Alchemist and it ended, I had a hard time because it didn't really have an ending. You know what I mean? It just kind of stopped. And I got to the end of that last episode, and the director pushed the little intercom button, and he said, "Okay, come on out." And I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute, it can't be done." He goes, "Yeah, that's it." I'm like, "What? No!" He's like, "Yeah, that's it." So, you know, we left, and that was the end. When I heard they were making another one, I have to tell you, my first thought was, woohoo! My second thought immediately after was, oh no. What's that? I mean, have we not all seen lots of sequels to great movies that are crap? You know what I mean? Because they made money with the first one, so let's crank out another one. And it's garbage, right? A lot of sequels. We see a lot of sequels to movies and TV shows and anime like that. So my first thought was, this is going to be great, more Full Metal. And 5 seconds later, oh no, what if it's bad? Because the first one was perfect. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, like the story, the animation, the music, everything about it was just hitting on all cylinders. You know, just a great piece of work. And it would be entirely possible And in fact, likely that a sequel just wouldn't be as good. The one thing that gave me hope was that ever since we were making the first Full Metal, hundreds of fans would come up at conventions just like this, and they might come to the autograph table, and I'm signing something from Full Metal for them, and they would say, "Hey, I really love your work in Full Metal Alchemist. Have you read the manga?" They always ask me. And of course I'm like, "No, why?" And they're like, "It's so good." Every fan told me the manga is absolutely amazing. So in the back of my mind, mental note, manga good. Full Metal manga good. So when I heard there was going to be another series, first thought, woohoo! Second thought, oh no. Third thought, manga good. Because Brotherhood was going to follow the manga. As soon as I heard that the new series was going to follow the manga, I'm like, ooh, that's a good sign, because all the fans really love the manga. So it was really a thrill and an honor to do the second, to do Brotherhood. I also appreciated it more because I'd done the first one. I came to love it, so I really savored the opportunity to play the character again. And you know, to me it was like more adventures. You know, a lot of people see Brotherhood as a retelling, right, of the story, and it kind of goes parallel, and then it just kind of goes off, follows the manga, where the original goes a different direction. Well, for me, it was just like more adventures for Fred. And seeing him in new situations, seeing him meeting new people, doing things he hadn't done in the first series, wearing different clothes occasionally. I know that seems stupid, but I would get excited. He's not wearing the red coat. I'm like, he's got more clothes!
Yeah.
This is great! Ed has more than one outfit. I know that's stupid, but I would get such a kick out of it, you know? It'd be like seeing Captain Kirk not in uniform, but in some gangster outfit, you know? Or whatever. It's like, cool, he's not wearing the same thing.
Yeah.
So I really love Brotherhood because I think they did a great job with it. They could have messed it up bad. I mean, sequels often are problematic, but they did a great job. Question? Hold on one second. Yes, ma'am.
If you can go back to do another character again, who would you do?
Oh my God.
No. He's done so many.
I will give you 3 words that answers that question. You ready? Welcome, poor man. I would do Oran High School.
Yes.
And in a heartbeat, I would pay
Tamaki.
you to let me do Oran High School.
Tamaki.
I love that series so much. But you know what? As soon as I hear myself say that, there are so many characters that I played that I loved so much. I loved Ed. I love that character. Rohan from JoJo was such a great character. And some of the characters that I played early on, when I still was brand new to voice acting and kind of really didn't even know what I was doing, you know? You're kind of like feeling your way, like, what is this? And how do I do this? And how can I be better at it? While you're still kind of learning the craft, there are characters that I did early on. There was a show that I did called Generator Gaul. It was a great series, and I played Gaul, and I think it was one of the first lead roles I ever played. And I really enjoyed it, but it was early in my career, so I feel like I was still kind of, learning to do the whole voice acting thing. Yes, sir.
What about Kenichi History Strongest Disciple? That was one of my favorites. Do you think they should go back and continue
What was
it?
his name?
You played Kensei.
Yes, Kensei. Kensei Ma. He was a pervert. Yeah, he was that weird old guy who was taking pictures of girls and stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
What kind of sensei is that? I don't know. What is he teaching, Kenichi?
Chinese martial arts.
I love it. Yeah, he was fun. He was a lot of fun. Like I said, as soon as you mention one, you start thinking of 5 or 10 more that you really enjoyed. You know what, you guys, let me just tell you this. no matter how big or small, no matter how important or secondary, I have so thoroughly enjoyed getting to do what I love. Every character I played, whether it was the Full Metal Alchemist or Man on Bench. Really, I mean, I love those characters. I love the chance to do what I do. You know, I mean, it's always been a privilege. So any role that I've ever played, I would love to play again. Question?
I do.
One second. I'll get to people. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Well, we know you've done Ed, Crowley, Rohan. Which one do you think is the most obscure character that you have done that nobody else knows?
Wow. Most obscure character.
Yes.
It's hard to know. I mean, I think probably any show that was not on television is going to be more obscure, right? But that's most anime. That's a tough question. Played a lot of obscure characters. Played a lot of really obscure.
Ghost stories.
You know what's fun about obscure characters is you can be a little more crazy with them because they're not going to be around long. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. If you're the main character, if you're the voice of the main character, you are kind of the foundation of the show, right? So you don't want to use some voice that's going to annoy people. You know what I mean? You don't want to do some voice or have the character be so out there
Yeah.
that the audience is like, okay, I'm really getting tired of this. Like, it was funny for the first 10 minutes, you know what I mean? And now it's just getting on my nerves. But with obscure little episodic characters, you can have so much fun because they're there and then they're gone. You can do voices that might even not be very comfortable to do. Like some weird voice that might hurt a little bit or make you a little hoarse after, but you only had to do it for one episode, maybe 25 or 30 lines, and you're done. As opposed to having to do it for 3 hours, 4 days a week, and just ruin your voice. You can't do it. So obscure characters are fun in that way. That you can be a little more animated, pardon the pun, and a little more expressive and fun with the characters, bigger, and you can even do use voices that might normally kind of hurt after a little while because they're only there for a short time. I will have to think about like characters that I like, what I would consider really obscure characters that I love. Generator Gall was a good example. Not a lot of people have heard of that. And by the way, in case you're interested, the director, the Japanese director who directed Generator Gall, also directed another show, Full Metal Alchemist.
Yep.
I had no idea. I was at Otakon in Baltimore, big anime convention, and the director of Full Metal Alchemist was there from Japan. Seiji Mizushima was his name. And I was so jazzed, right? I'm like, oh my gosh. This is after we had done Full Metal Alchemist, and I was so excited to meet the guy. So I searched for him, found him somewhere like in the green room or some guest gathering, and I had a translator. No, he had a translator. He had a translator right with him because most people speak English, and so I go up to him, and here's his translator, and I would say, hello, hajimemashite, I go and tried to say the one or two things I can say. And then I would ask him, please tell him, I play Edward in English. And he's like, and he's talking, they're talking, and he shakes my hand, and we take pictures, and it was wonderful. And then he turns to his guy, and he goes, and they're talking quietly, and I have no idea what they're saying. And his translator looks at me and says, you also play Generator Gall? And I was like, yes. And his translator goes, he director. I was like, what? I scared this little Japanese man to death. I was like, are you generator gall? And he was laughing and I'm hugging him. And, So the whole rest of the weekend, whenever I would see him, like from a distance, I would be walking somewhere and he would be over there going the other way, and I'd glance over and see him and he'd go. It was so neat. So, question? Yes.
Well, it's two actually. Do you feel like we have gotten more opportunities since everything, and do you think you'll ever get back into just working voice acting in general, or what do you feel about your future?
It's hard to know, right? Nobody can really predict the future. It's hard to know. I certainly would like to do more, and I know that there are a lot of people out there that have been so encouraging to do more. I want to. It would be sad to spend 20-some years developing a skill, and you know what I mean, and then suddenly not be able to use it. But who knows, right? You don't know. Who knows what tomorrow holds? I can tell you this, that I know that there are people out there that are talking seriously about creating their own studios, about starting a new dubbing studio and getting licenses, and they've already spoken with me, not just as a voice actor, but I mean, I also directed. I've also directed a couple of things, and I feel like I'm pretty good at that. I know the industry. I know about writing, translation, acting, directing, sound design. So, who knows? I will tell you that I feel, even with everything, I feel that I have been more blessed than I deserve. If I never got to do another thing, I already, you know what I mean? I already was blessed way beyond what I ever deserved. But I hope to get to do more. And there are always things to do. I mean, I love anything creative, whether it's music, writing and producing music professionally, or acting in other ways. I just finished a short film in Phoenix that is being edited now. It's a short film based on Silent Hill, the video game.
Yep.
The audiobook thing I mentioned. There are a lot of possibilities, and I'm just I'm open to wherever God leads me. You know, that's about all you can do at the end of the day, right? You can only do so much yourself. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any memories working as Rompo from Bruno Stray Dogs?
Yes, I loved Rompo. That, you know, somebody asked me, you know what, it's funny, I thank you for mentioning that. Somebody asked me at the table what was the most recent character I played. And I think it was either Rampo or it was Rohan from JoJo. Because I remember doing both of those most recently. I loved him. He was a really neat character. That's what I remember most, is just really enjoying the character. Kind of ADHD and a little smart mouth, you know, knowing more than anyone else, and very proud of his reasoning skills. I loved him. And, you know, you guys, I want to say something in closing, if I may. I don't know what the future is going to hold. I know that I have thoroughly loved what I've gotten to do over the last 20-some years. I've poured my heart into every character I've played. I've loved being a part of what I've done. The world has changed in a lot of different ways that are not good. And I don't know whether I will ever get to play characters that I've played over my career. I don't know whether I'll get to do that again. But even if I don't, and this is hard to say, even if I don't, I have to remind myself of all the good. I have to remind myself of all of the gifts, and among them, I would count you as people that I've gotten to meet, people that I've interacted with, who've enjoyed my work over the years. You know, and I've done, like I said, I've done like 300 or 400 anime series and video games. So if I never recorded another thing, ever, there's plenty, right? There's plenty out there of my body of work. But if I believe in God, and I do, then I have to believe He's in charge. And I'm not. And I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what's around the next corner, but I have to believe that He does. And I have to let go. It's not easy. I'm a kind of control guy. I think most of us in some way want some kind of semblance of control, want to feel like we have some kind of control over our lives and our futures and our careers and relationships and people and places and things. But one thing I've learned over the last while is that you have to let go of that idea of controlling everything. You can try, but at the end of the day, you don't ultimately have control. So I'm going to do my best to press forward, take the opportunities that I'm given, be incredibly grateful for the opportunities that I'm given. I will look forward to interacting with as many people who've enjoyed my work over the years as possible. I will never cease to be grateful and humbled by people who've enjoyed my work and come to events and express their support, their kindness. I will never, ever take that for granted. I never have, and I never will. So whatever the future holds, I want you guys to know how incredibly grateful and blessed I feel to know you and to have met you and been some small part of your life growing up. Shows that you enjoyed, series that you bonded with a brother or sister over, or made friends, or even had a relationship and got married. I've been recording some cameos lately from people that are like, my now wife, we're celebrating our 3rd anniversary, and we bonded because she introduced me to Full Metal Alchemist. I mean, that's priceless, you know? And so I'm incredibly grateful to have been some small part of people's lives. I hope I can continue to, but whatever happens, just know how grateful I am for all of you. Okay? Thank you so much. Thank you. If I haven't met you yet, or even if I have, I'm going to go back to the autograph table for a while. Please come by. I'd love to sign something for you, get a photo or whatever if you'd like. And I'll be here tomorrow as well. But apart from that, thank you so much for coming, and enjoy the rest of the show. All right? Take care, guys.